Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today we're going to get started with part 2, so let's go ahead and get started. Raja Yoga, Path of Meditation.
Oh, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. The different yogas are all these different ways to remove the second arrow, the real cause of suffering. And each yoga has its own paradigm, the way it sees the problem and the solution it offers. The path of bhakti says the problem is we do not have faith in God, we do not have trust and surrender and love for God, and the solution is bhakti, devotion to God. The way of karma yoga says our whole problem is this terrible attachment to body and mind and selfishness. And the solution is to transform our lives, make it completely unselfish. Then the path of Raja Yoga, which we have taken up now, it says it's not so much a question of selfishness or unselfishness, not so much a question of believing something or not believing something, faith or no faith. Rather, we do not experience the reality as it is. We do not experience ourselves as pure consciousness, which is not subject to the second arrow, which is not even subject to the first arrow. If you are not subject to the first arrow, you are not subject to the second arrow also. You are not a body, hence.
Sorry, so first arrow is the physical aspect, if I remember correctly, like physical pain, disease, and all that. Second arrow is, well, I think the second arrow, I thought it was maybe more emotional or intellectual, like, you know, the troubles that trouble you, but it's not physical. But I think the second arrow is more along the lines of the realization that you are not the body, the mind and the emotions. Yeah, actually, that might, no, actually, I think the second arrow is that you're not the body, the mind, or your emotions. It's the second arrow. First arrow is literally physical issues.
It's not subject to old age, disease, and death. You are not even the mind, not subject to confusion, sorrow, and disappointment. You are an immortal awareness, consciousness. You do not know this, you do not see this, therefore, all problems. Then why do we not see this? The answer is that the mind is disturbed, is constantly being thrown into waves, and it obscures what lies beneath or beyond the mind, the consciousness, our real nature. So the solution will be, problem is restlessness of the mind, solution is calmness of the mind, concentration, focus, serenity of the mind. So this is the path of meditation. Swami Vivekananda called it Raja Yoga. It's based on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So yesterday we saw the background of it, the nice stories of Hiranyagarbha and Patanjali and so on. That's why if often in yoga books which are translations of Yoga Sutras, for example, you will see a depiction of the multi-headed serpent and Patanjali sitting. So that's the background of the story, why that kind of iconography is used. So Yoga Sutras. Yesterday I offered a set of practical points for meditation, which are very helpful for meditation. Whatever your meditation practice, those 10 points which Ashokanji mentions are really good. But today there's the heavy stuff. I won't say the boring stuff, but the heavy stuff. The Yoga Sutras themselves. We will do 4 sutras. The first 4 sutras. And the first sutra is the introduction to the Yoga Sutras. It is, well, what is the text we are taking up? Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is the oldest manual of meditation we can find. So the first sutra is Atha Yoganushasanam. Let me write it down.
Sorry about that. So I had to cut out a lot just because I was literally just sitting there listening to him talking about, well, a lot of things about the different people who interpreted the Yoga Sutras. So if, again, you shouldn't be on my channel watching this. You should be watching my reaction, which for the most part we're doing both together, but if there's a long period where I'm not talking, I have to cut that out. I just don't feel right playing the entirety of the video without interrupting. Hopefully I got to a good spot. Again, the original video will be in the link, so please check it out if you have not already, especially if you haven't. So let's go ahead and get started from right here.
So yoga has two meanings.
So this is the reason why I went back into recording, is because the yoga meaning. That's interesting. Now I don't think I actually know what the real meaning of yoga, other than learning it from Street Fighter with Dalsim, which I know is not the right thing, and then yoga being meditation, especially in the Western definition of it, which is like stretching or meditating, but that's practically it. So hopefully he's going to explain, I guess, the deeper meaning of yoga. I don't know. He says there's two meanings to it, so let's see what those two meanings are.
The original Sanskrit, see, etymology comes. What is the meaning of the word? The original Sanskrit is huge.
Huge.
Good to know, because yoga is such a popular word these days. What does it actually mean?
Yeah.
Originally, the original Sanskrit meaning, it comes from the term yuj, and it has two meanings: yuj samadho, yujir yoge.
Okay, not huge as in like big. Is that Y-U-J? I think so. Okay, I was reading the translation in yoga and CC there wrong.
So one is samadhi, meditation.
Meditation.
One meaning is meditation.
Okay.
Another meaning is union, joining.
That's right. I forgot. Sadhguru says yoga was union. Can't believe it. I mean, look, okay. I forget things, especially if they only say it once. That's why I watch multiple Sadhguru, multiple videos.
Yoga means to join two things. Another meaning is meditation. In this case, Yoga Sutras, the meaning is meditation. This meaning is taken. Why not this meaning?
Yeah.
Because often people think, yoga or spirituality is joining the Jivatma to the Paramatma, to the sentient being, to the Supreme Self, and so on. But not in yoga. In yoga means separation, not joining. The whole problem is we have become joined to material nature. You are spirit, you have become joined to a material nature. You are Purusha, you have become joined to Prakriti. You are consciousness, you have become mixed up with matter. And that is the whole problem, that is samsara. So the whole purpose of yoga is to separate Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and matter. To show you that you are not material, that you are pure spirit. So therefore this meaning of union will not apply.
That's really weird to explain it that way when you understand Advaita Vedanta as everything is one. There's non-duality, basically. But wait, is it non-duality in terms of you and God, as opposed to the material world? Okay, so here, let me, this is how I understood it, in terms, and how I accept Advaita Vedanta, as far as I know, which is everything is Brahman, and Brahman itself is the fabric of the universe, and you are part of the universe, therefore you're a part of Brahman. You are Brahman, the rocks are Brahman, the cell phone's Brahman, this pen is Brahman. We are all made out of the same thing, so that's how that's how it makes sense in my mind what Brahman is. Not anything with deities or anything like that. But it's weird. Well, I guess I don't know if it's weird or not. But to say that, to separate yourself from material world, is he trying to say that the Atman is immaterial, which then there would be duality, the immaterial and material world?
In a very loose sense, it might apply. How? union with your real self. You are already the real self, pure consciousness, just that you don't know it. You think you are the body-mind. And so when you know it by the process of yoga, you can sort of indirectly say you have been united with your real self. In that sense, you can sort of stretch the meaning. But really, yoga here means viyoga. Yoga means separation. Separation from material nature. All right.
That is weird to say yoga means union, but yoga also means separation. But it is, I guess, I guess he was trying to say, like earlier, where the union between you and the true God or your true self is the way they say that you can say union loosely.
And what else? Okay. Now we go on to the second sutra. First, let's repeat the first sutra. That's how traditionally it is studied. The teacher will chant the sutra and the students repeat it. Atha yoganushasanam. Atha yoganushasanam. This word atha also, I can't resist the itch to mention it because, see, there are many things which I did not mention. Traditionally, while studying any kind of scripture, it has to start with what is called mangala, an auspicious chant. So usually, you'll see we start with a chant. Texts also start with a chant. Usually it's a chant in praise of the guru or bowing down to God or something auspicious. And then you start the study. Now, atha has this meaning. It is auspicious. So, Om, if you chant, that's auspicious. And one other auspicious word is atha. Hence, here it means hence or now, an entry into spiritual life. So it's auspicious. So in that sense, Mangala, one purpose it serves is to make an auspicious beginning. Bhaktim, athato bhaktim vyakhyāsyāmaha. Now we shall explain Bhakti Sutras. But there also atha. Athato brahma jigyasa, now an inquiry, now hence an inquiry into Brahman. See, atha. But not always. The Shiva Sutras of Kashmiri Shaivism, it starts straight away. Chaitanyam Atma, consciousness is the self. Immediately objection will come. Where is your auspicious chant? What's the hurry? Where is your auspicious chant? And the answer will be that you are directly referring to the highest reality, consciousness itself. That's auspicious. So that way. Anyway, that's not so pertinent. Next. Second, what is, now training about yoga. The question will arise now, what is yoga then? You're going to train us about yoga. So what is the teaching about yoga? Before the teaching, tell us what yoga is. Define it. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. So yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga, mind, modification, cessation. So yoga is mind, modification, cessation. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha, cessation or quietening. Do you see what I said earlier? It's the turbulence of the mind which is preventing us from realizing our real nature. So yoga, the purpose of yoga is to calm the mind down, to make the mind one-pointed, calm, focused, so that there is no turbulence in the mind. Yoga is the cessation of the modification of the mind. So this requires some explanation. Swami.
Yeah, I was going to say, yoga being separation here between you and the material world. So yoga, let's see, the separation of the material world is mind modification cessation. I guess, I mean, mind modification cessation alone makes sense because you're trying to well modify cessation of your mind of all the material thoughts.
Vivekananda puts it this way. All right, we'll go to that a little later. First, little background. Yoga philosophy is derived from Sankhya philosophy. Yoga philosophy is derived from Sankhya philosophy. And the Sankhya philosophy has, literally the word Sankhya comes from Sankhya, which means number. And so they enumerate the categories of nature. Very ancient philosophy. When the Buddha went out to learn and become enlightened, he got masters, teachers who were basically some kind of proto-Sankhyan teachers. So what he learned from them, which he was not satisfied with, but the teaching he got was Sankhyan. So what is the enumeration? What do they talk about? What are the categories? 25 categories they talk about. Don't worry, don't get tense, 25 categories. Now all of it is not important. Most important is Purusha, consciousness. Purusha also literally means male, and that's a derived meaning, but the original meaning is that spiritual being, that consciousness, which we are. Whether you're in a male body, a female body, whatever, we are that consciousness. Body is not important there. So that's one. And there is another category called Prakriti, nature.
These specific terminologies, I've heard them before, but it's very difficult for me to remember them.
Remember, this is Sankhya philosophy, not Vedanta. Don't become confused. Don't mix them up together. There are big differences. Purusha is pure consciousness, the self, and Prakriti is material nature. And Prakriti has evolutes. Prakriti evolves into this universe. Prakriti is always changing. It's made of, what is it made of? What is Purusha made of? Consciousness. What is Prakriti made of? Sattva, Rajas, Tamas.
I was going to say material.
Sattva plus Rajas plus Tamas. Now from Prakriti what happens? First thing which emerges is called Buddhi. A self-awareness. Or awareness itself, knowledge, knowingness, let us call it. The buddhi, what they are talking about, is not literally the intellect which we have now. Another name for that is mahat. From that comes buddhi, ahankara. The ego, ahankara, ego. So buddhi, sort of approximately you can translate it as intellect, understanding or knowingness, and then ego. Interesting. See, already the difference between consciousness and mind it's very clear. Today, this basic understanding is not there or not accepted in modern consciousness studies. Modern consciousness studies still mixes the whole thing together. Consciousness, intelligence, mind, perception, all of it is called consciousness studies. And there's a reason why they do it, we'll see. Sankhya and Yoga says there lies the problem. The inability to distinguish yourself from your mind. Ahankara, ego. And then manas, mind. And from that comes 5 sense organs, 5 motor organs. These are not the actual physical organs, but the powers. 5 motor organs, 5 subtle elements, and 5 gross elements. If you're wondering what's all that, very complicated, don't worry about it. You can just write it down. 5 sense organs, buddhi indriya, jnanindriya. You can write in English 5 sense organs. And then if you are writing, then 5 motor organs. 5 subtle elements, in Sanskrit tanmatra. And 5 gross elements. What are the 5 subtle elements and 5 gross elements? 5 subtle elements are sky and wind and fire and water and earth, but not in the way we find them, not this sky or not the wind, none of this. In a very subtle form, almost like a mental form. And then they mix among themselves and form this physical universe, which is perceptible to us. Anyway, that's the way they look at it. Notice that the whole universe is seen as emerging from the subject, from inwards to outwards, from consciousness outwards to the universe. What we regard as the universe starts here. It's from these 5 gross elements that this physical universe is created.
Can you tell us the Sanskrit words for the 5 mysteries?
Yes, Pancha Gyanindriya, 5 Gyanindriyas. Then 5 Karmendriyas, motor organs. 5.
Hold on. Motor organs. What in the world? Lungs, heart, brain. 2 more. I'm assuming number 1 and number 2 for the release of motor organs. No, maybe heart, lungs, stomach, brain. I wish you would explain that. I'm kind of curious. The motor organs. Because the sense organs are, your touch, smell, taste, and all that. Maybe the motor organs is your legs, hands. I'm not sure, huh?
Tanmatras, Pancha Tanmatra. Tanmatra actually in Sanskrit, tat matra, that much only. That means the subtle elements. And then Pancha Bhuta. Or in Sanskrit, Pancha Mahabhuta. Bhuta means not ghosts. Here, Bhuta means elements, the 5 elements. You see, it's not just Sankhya. Any ancient cosmology, in India, in Greece, in China, they talked about 4 elements or 5 elements. Yes?
The gunas, are they sitting above the buddhi?
Yes, they are Prakriti. This is the constituents of Prakriti. Prakriti is made of the 3 gunas. The way they describe it is, imagine a rope. A rope has braids. So imagine Prakriti as a rope, and it has 3 braids. Or imagine in our modern, when you look at the depiction of a DNA, like coiled like that, the strands are coiled with each other, the DNA helix, double helix, like that. It also means string. Gunas actually means strings. Somebody said super strings. So we have come back to the same idea now. And it's interesting. They are extraordinarily subtle. They are the fundamental constituents of nature, and they are vibrating. It's almost like a description of superstrings. And they produce the entire universe. So these 3 together.
Swami, what's the term for the motor organs?
Motor organs, Karmendriya. 5 Gyanendriya, 5 Karmendriya, 5 subtle elements, 5 physical elements or gross elements. So this is the whole system of Sankhya. And this whole thing is borrowed by yoga. Now why am I saying all this? What is the point? The point is this. These 3 together, Buddhi plus Ahankara plus Manas, is called Chitta. What Chitta? This one, Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So I'm trying to explain what does this word. I've translated it as mind, but mind is a very broad term. What does it include? It includes, in our case, our intellect, our ego, the ego that we feel right now. Intellect, the knowingness, the understanding that we feel right now, the power of clarity, knowledge, and the ego, and the mind. What are the functions of each? Why are we using different terms for them? Because each of them has different functions. The ego in Sanskrit, the function of the buddhi first, function of the intellect, nishchayatmika buddhi. Buddhi is that which gives clarity, understanding, reveals to us. Also it is the agency that I do. the doing, that I am doing something, I am the doer of this action. This comes from buddhi, kartritva, doing. So buddhi is that function of the chitta which gives knowledge, clarity. And manas is that function of the chitta, it's sankalpa vikalpa atmakam mana. That means when you are considering many things, thoughts are coming in. What the manas does is, it collects information from the world outside, to the 5 sense organs. And it collects information from its storehouse, memory. And it considers many things. Many thoughts come up in it, perceptions are all dumped in it, all the sensors are pulling in information. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. And they all are dumped into the manas. And the manas also retrieves information from memory. And it has many kinds of perceptions, feelings, pleasure, pain, and all kinds of subtle related feelings about it. All of this churning goes on in the manas, and when there is clarity, knowledge, flash of knowledge, I get it, buddhi.
Wow, manas is a lot. Buddhi's clarity in everything. Manas is... I was going to say, I thought he was talking about memory, but no. I'm wondering if it is just purely memory as well, in a way. Just because anything that you see is... Can we safely say that anything that you see in your experience is memory? Mind you, short-term memory and long-term memory. So anything that you're inputting from your 5 sense organs is stored in short-term memory, because you don't know if you're going to remember it long-term or not. So I'm wondering if manas would be a very good way to say memory, both short and long-term. Again, I remember that. Now, whether I remember that tomorrow, it's going to be a different story. That's whether it goes to long-term memory. But short-term memory, I remember that. I remember a lot of things that happened throughout today. Now, whether what I remember what happened yesterday is in short-term memory. Now, whether I remember that a week from now, that will determine whether it goes to long-term memory. So maybe I wonder if a good definition of manas would be just in terms of memory, because everything that we experience is always going to go to memory. It's just a matter whether it gets lost or whether we remember it for short term, and then whether it gets lost again, and then whether it goes to long term. So what I mean by lost the first time was just the fact whether you like every day there's a whole bunch of things going on around you. You don't remember every single little aspect. So even though you've seen it, you don't really even put it into your short-term memory. It's just lost automatically. And there are certain things that kind of stands out a little bit. It's like, oh, that looks really nice. Short-term memory. And all of a sudden when you go to sleep and wake back up, maybe you forget about it and it doesn't go to long-term memory, but the color of something else that you saw, you remember for long-term memory. I wonder if that's a pretty good definition of manas.
But they're all part of the same thing called chitta. And what does ahankara, the ego, do?
The ego.
The ego is, in Sanskrit its function is abhimanatmika. Abhimanatmika means appropriating function. That means it identifies. When thoughts are there, I am thinking. When you're seeing the sight, eyes giving perception to the mind, what does the ego say? I see. When the intellect gets a flash of understanding, what does the ego say? I understand. The ego is that which integrates all these functions under one head. What is that head? I. So it's necessary for functioning. Then you feel a sense of integration, that I am this one person. I am the one who saw. I am the one who thought about it. I am the one who understood. Seeing, sense organ. Thinking, mind. Feeling, mind. And understanding, intellect. And all of that is appropriated, taken up by, owned by ego, I. It gives ego, that feeling of I am doing, the doingness, sense of agency is in buddhi, but the ego says I do. I enjoy. Which one?
I can't hear the guy. So basically the ego is when you confuse the I as in the mind as opposed to the Atman. I believe that's what he's trying to say, and if I remember correctly as well, the ego being the waker, the dreamer, and the deep sleeper are the three different egos that you have from his explanation. When we're the waker ego, we are in the waker world, and the ego is the fact that's saying that I am this material body as opposed to the Atman, which is the fourth stage. It's the fourth stage? This is the fourth Atman, I believe. No, Turiya. Sorry, the Turiya is the fourth stage, which is the Atman. But yeah, the ego says that I am this, I am that, I am the mind, as opposed to the Atman or Turiya.
There's no I in Buddhi. Buddhi is understanding. Flash, got it. But I got it. Yeah. That is ego.
But earlier you said Buddhi says I did it.
No. Agency is there, the doing it, the doership is in Buddhi, Kartritva. And the ego comes and joins, says, I do it. The sense of execution, Buddhi feels that the agent, it's the agent. And then ego comes and says, I am the agent. The agentship is taken up by, understanding in the Buddhi is taken up by ego and says, I understand. Notice, these are subtle differences of functions.
So is he saying here that kind of like the way I understand it? Let me let me try to say this. Instead of saying that my body's doing this, my emotions feeling this, my mind is thinking this, and your true self would say, I can see my body doing this, I can see my emotions doing this, I can see my mind doing this. But the ego comes in and says, oh, I am doing this with my body. I am the body. I am doing this with my emotions. I am the emotions. I am doing this with my mind because I am the mind. As opposed to saying, I see my body doing this. I see my emotions doing this. I see my mind doing this. It's a way of separation from you and those three things. The ego comes in and says, no, you're part of these three things.
But these differences are there. If you just note it, you will see differences are there in the mind. Ego feels like one function. Understanding feels like another function. Memory feels like another function. Thinking, emotions, another function. Multiplicity of perceptions, another function. And the doing things through through motor organs, another set of functions.
Oh, wow.
All of that is integrated. And it's one inner organ, it's called antakarana, inner organ. Inner organ in contrast to the external organs. What are the external organs? Sense organs and motor organs. These are external organs.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Actually in contact with the world, physical world. The mind is not in contact with the physical world. The mind is in contact with the sense organs and the motor organs of execution, motor organs. So the mind is in contact with the inner world, and it takes information from the senses. Senses are in contact with the actual external world. So senses are called external organs. But this whole thing, the chitta, is called inner organ. Inner organ of knowledge. Yes.
So for example, in the case of, so this subtle body, not subtle, right? And then you're saying it connects with the gross body, which is the senses.
Yes. No, both are affected. Remember, all this is part of nature. So, if there is a deep-seated problem in the physical body, say dementia or something, it will have effect on the physical body, but also it will affect the inner functioning of the intellect, of the memory. All of that will be affected.
Chitta and Antakarana are the same?
Yes. Here, Chitta and Antakarana are the same. Now, an important question. Again, the word Chitta has a specific meaning, not here, but in Vedanta. It has a specific meaning, memory. So when Shankaracharya sings, Mano buddhyahankara chittani naham, I am not the mind, all right, check. I am not the ego, buddhi, check. I am not the I, ahankara. Notice, the real I is not the ego.
Whoa, he said I'm not the ego, buddhi. Which is supposed to be the clarity, though. Am I wrong? Let me rewind that.
I am not the ego, buddhi, check.
Oh, wait, rewind it again.
All right, check. Ahankara chittani naham. I am not the mind. All right, check.
Which I interpreted as memory.
I am not the ego, buddhi. Check.
But I thought buddhi was clarity though.
I am not the I, ahankara.
The ego and I was that when he's pointing at now, it looks like ahamkara. I thought the buddhi was the clarity, and the ahamkara is the I, the ego, saying that I did this, I thought of this.
Notice, the real I is not the ego. Who is the real I? So I am not I, the Purusha, I am not this ego. Ego is a function of the mind. It's a movement of the inner organ. But then he goes on to say another important point. Chittani naham. So definitely there the chitta does not mean this chitta, because then it will be double counting. Already he has dismissed this. So one more function is there which is not mentioned in the yoga or Sankhya psychology, that is memory. Here they include it in the mind itself. So, and they use the word chitta for the entire thing. Yes.
Question about agents.
Yeah.
The agency.
Agency, yes.
You mentioned that it is a function of buddhi.
Buddhi, and the ahankara appropriates it. I am the doer. Doership, the sense of execution, is the doing. I am the agent. That's there, but the ahankara appropriates it, and together you get the agent. The I am the agent.
That's a very important difference.
Yes. If you notice it, you will see. Suppose doership is not there. I can't do. I feel paralyzed. I can't do anything. But the ego is still there. Now the ego does not feel like the doer anymore. It's being done to me, but I can't do anything. There's a separation of ego and doership there. All right.
Okay, so I don't. Before he gets forward, so is he trying to say that ahamkara only takes charge to say I am doing this, or in terms of buddhi as well? Buddhi is the clarity, and ahamkara will say, "Aha, now I got it." As opposed to buddhi being just clarity, ahamkara and the clarity is the ego. And ahamkara is just the I alone. So a combination of those two, the buddhi and the ahamkara, would be I am the ego. Then that would make sense, although it's kind of weird he said that buddhi was clarity and ahamkara was ego, but now it's ahamkara is the I, and the buddhi is the ego, and then those two combined, the buddhi is the ego with clarity. That's going against Sadhguru. I think the buddhi is the aha moment, as in I get it. It's not necessarily like clarity, or not the true clarity, I suppose. It's more along the lines I understand what's going on. So the ahamkara, the I, along with the understanding, is the ego. Oof.
Now all of this together, these internal activities together are known as the chitta, and their activities are known as vritti. Vritti means the activity. You can understand it this way. If the chitta is like the sea, vritti is like the waves.
No, I was confused with the antakarana and the chitta.
Antakarana and chitta are the same. What we call antakarana in Vedanta is called chitta here. So, chitta, compare it to the sea, then the vrittis are the waves. The waves are not different from the sea. They are the activity of the sea. So, the activity can be of different types. One type of activity is understanding, buddhi. One type of activity is ego, ahankara. That's also an activity of the mind.
No, he said the buddhi was the ego, and now he's saying the ahamkara is the ego. Let me know, what in the world did I miss? So far, the mantis, I believe that is in the very bottom, is quite clear. It's essentially memory that's stored of your sense organs and everything in the physical realm. I wonder if I got that one right. It seems to be test my questioning of it, that again, even like me touching my sense organ, me feeling that goes to the mind but remembers the feeling and where it's at. So it is still technically part of memory, even though it's the sense of touch. But you remember smell, sight, taste, touch, and hear. You hear things, you remember the hearing. So that's still part of memory in a way.
One type of activity is thinking, perceiving, that's in the mind. Mind plus sense organs. So this is called Chitta. And the cessation of the movements, the activity, the restlessness is continuously moving. Things are happening there all the time, right now also. In fact, the yogis, they consider even sleep. So nothing is happening, I'm feeling very dull and sleepy. That sleep is also a function of the Chitta. Chitta gets resolved, it stops moving for some time, that's also a function. So according to the yogis, deep sleep is also a function of Chitta. In the Sankhya or Yoga psychology. All of these functions, they have to stop.
Swamiji, and how does the Pancha Mahabhuta and Tanmatra, how does that really, what's the function of that with relation to Chitta?
So the Chitta, these Pancha Tanmatras and Pancha Mahabhutas, they go out to make up the external world. They make up the external world. And the Chitta, also the physical basis of Chitta is also the subtle Panchabhutas. That also goes to make up our individual minds. So that gives like the physical substrate of all of this.
Since the subtle body is involved here, if the gross body dies, that is not just the failure of
No, it's not that. The gross body comes after this. Physical world and gross body, all of them come after the 5 gross elements. Up to this is a subtle world. When this physical body falls apart, the subtle body will go away into other lives. Consciousness remains constant. Yes.
Swamiji, the gross body, to trace back the source is Prakriti.
I can hear.
All of this, the source is Prakriti.
So based on the
Everything in this universe, source is Prakriti.
yeah, so based on the makeup of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, can one affect?
Yes, certainly. So all of these are made of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Everything that is produced from Prakriti is made of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, because its source material is Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. So Buddhi is made of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Ahankara, Manas, the sense organs, the motor organs, the subtle elements and the gross elements, and everything in the universe is ultimately made of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Yes.
Swamiji, how do you separate the gross elements from the physical nature of everything?
The physical nature of everything are the gross elements. Everything according to this kind of cosmology, everything that we experience in this universe, whatever we see, whatever we hear, smell, taste, touch, matter is, if you break it down, it's nothing other than space and air and fire and water and earth. Yeah. So that was their way of understanding, yes.
Where does the Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas comes from?
It doesn't come. So according to Sankhya philosophy, these two are eternal realities, Purusha and Prakriti. They have coexisted forever and they interact with each other. Nature is eternal, beginningless and endless. It will not disappear. It has been there forever and it will continue to be there. It just keeps changing. When it resolves, everything resolves back into Prakriti. That is called the dissolution of the universe. But Prakriti remains, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas remains. And then when it vibrates again and the entire universe is produced. And this goes through cycles. Purusha remains constant. In Sankhya there are many Purushas. Many, each of us is an individual Purusha. Infinite consciousness, but many. How can there be many infinites? They give the example of lights. So one light, when you switch it on, it pervades the entire room. If you switch on another light, that also pervades the entire same room. So the entirety of Prakriti is pervaded by consciousness and many consciousnesses. And
Before it gets on, I'll rewind a little bit. It's very interesting. Prakriti itself, he was talking about how it basically dissolves and then recreates itself. Again, about the you can see that very much in the Big Bang Theory, and along the lines of what Sadhguru has said about 84, the number 84, which maybe that's how many times this universe has been created and dissolved, according to this. And oh man, honestly, it's gonna blow my mind if scientists come up and says, yeah, see, 83 and 84. We think the universe has been created 84 times. Oh my gosh. But yeah, he hasn't given a number yet, but at least what he's saying, at least in terms of these teachings, is that the universe has been created and disappeared multiple times. Or does disappear. Now, I don't know how many times.
So the entirety of Prakriti is pervaded by consciousness and many consciousnesses. And these consciousnesses, they get entangled with subtle bodies, with minds and intellects. And then they feel, I am this one. And they forget their own nature. And then they think, I am a body or a mind. I'm a body-mind. And then samsara begins for them.
So all of Maya is the interweaving of Purusha and Prakriti, or is Purusha confusing itself
With Prakriti, yes.
That's basically what
Yes.
Maya
So
is.
that is, yes. But remember, they don't use the term Maya. They use the term Prakriti. It is this thing which later on Vedanta takes the Prakriti of Sankhya and Yoga and adds it to Brahman, makes it the power of Brahman. Remember, here the two are separate. But there in Vedanta, what it was, Shankara does is, he merges Prakriti back into Purusha and says it is just the power of Brahman, like fire and its burning power. They are not two different things. So consciousness and its power is Prakriti. There he does not use the term Prakriti. Sometimes he does, but most the term Maya is introduced. So the Maya of Advaita Vedanta has its genealogy, its roots in the Prakriti of Sankhya. Yes.
In Vedanta, the Ahamkar is what you can trace back to Brahman.
No. All of them, Ahankara is traceable to Prakriti. Remember, Ahankara has two aspects. One is consciousness and one is the ego. Yes. So the Ahankara itself is always part of Prakriti or Maya. But there is behind it, see the whole thing in spiritual life, in Sankhya, Yoga or in Vedanta, you can put it in this way. The ego, Ahankara, what does it refer to? What I mean is, every word refers to something. When I say chalk is a word, it's a sound. What does it refer to? This. So word refers to something, object, as a meaning. The philosopher Wittgenstein, there's a story about him. He used to teach in Cambridge. So he was talking about word and meaning. So he raised the chalk in the class, it seems. And he asked, what is this? And one of the students said, sir, it's a chalk. He said, chalk is a word. And he threw the chalk and he hit the student and said, is that a word? That's a thing. The difference between word and thing, we confuse after some time. It becomes same for us because we continuously use words. But what does a word refer to? When you say chalk, it's a sound. It refers to this object. Mic, it's a sound. It refers to this object. I is a word, a sound. What does it refer to? What does it refer to?
Yourself.
Ahankara, yes. What does Ahankara is I? What does it refer to?
Turiya Atman.
What does it mean? Which is the object? Show me the object. Victoria said body mind.
Again, like this is where I say that maybe science hasn't come far enough yet to find out where is the object of I. I believe that it's in our mind. It's just that we don't know where yet. Although, again, I'll be amazed if when scientists maps up the entire mind and say, I still don't know where I is at. I'll be like, oh crap. But I think it's in the mind. It may be electrical signals or something, but I think it's in the mind.
I am this. So it refers to this Chitta and also the physical body, sense organs, karmendriya, all of that together. Body-mind complex is the reference of the I. And Vedanta, Sankhya, Yoga, they say this is the problem. I does not refer to body-mind. That is the ahankara. The real I is beyond the body-mind. That is Purusha, consciousness. That is totally forgotten. That Purusha itself, shining upon the Prakriti, forgetting itself, thinks I am this. And uses the I, which is a product of the Prakriti, to refer to itself as I am this. As long as it refers to itself as I am this, samsara will continue for it.
Okay, before the next question, I'm going to have to pause it here. But again, this is the only difference so far as in terms of how I experience the world and believe the world to work. In terms of Advaita Vedanta, is the fact that Advaita Vedanta says that the Turiya, the Atman itself, is something separate from the body. I have not experienced that. Even during that half a second of blankness, I didn't feel anything separation or anything. I mean, I literally could have just blacked out there for half a second. But in terms of how I experience the world, obviously it's quite easy to see that you are the mind, some aspect of the mind, and which is what he's saying is the problem. How I think I am the mind, which is the problem, is the reason why you are suffering or samsara in this world, why you keep being reborn, is because you don't see yourself as something separate from the mind, and that's the problem. However, in my thinking, it's not necessarily a problem. I can still be, in my opinion, and how I've lived my life thus far, is that I can still see myself in the mind and still understand that the emotions, the feelings, and everything doesn't necessarily have to be something separate from you, but you can understand it and see it as something other than you. It is something that you have control over, which is something that I do believe on what Sadhguru was talking about, especially with inner engineering. It's the sheer fact that you have control over your body. You're in control over your body, let's just put it that way. And the fact that when you feel these emotions, these thoughts, these actions, these pain, you can see it as something separate from you, that you yourself do not feel these pains or these emotions, and you can observe them, which I have kinda. Not saying I have completely, not at all, but I can kind of separate myself from those emotions. I can understand that these are irrational, these are not healthy to a degree. Obviously, I'm by no means able to completely separate myself from that, but I am able to have some control over it. And so again, the only difference between my understanding of my life with the teachings of this is that the mind, the Atman, is, in my opinion, still in your mind. But in terms of Advaita Vedanta, it is something separate from your mind and your body. Alright, well, I gotta pause right here, and then we'll start up part 2. Hopefully I don't have to edit out anything, just because I really, honestly, I was watching, I was feeling super guilty, and I didn't want to add that part in there because I wasn't really commenting at all. So please go check it out if you haven't already. Link in the description, and watch the whole thing. Please do not watch it on my channel. You're coming to my channel for my reaction, not to watch the video. Anyways, that's it for this one, at least this part. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.